Hi there, my name is Joe Razzo, and this is my submission for the Productivity and Counterproductivity in the Workplace assignment for PSYC 516. Okay, first question. How have recent events since 2020 affected industrial and organizational psychology? When we look back over the past few years, it's clear that there have been several major events that have really reshaped our lives and the way we think about work. Since 2020, we've seen several big shifts that have changed what researchers focus on and how organizations handle everyday workplace issues. First of all, the biggest shift that I remember and that I relate to 2020 is the COVID-19 pandemic. We saw basically overnight millions of people having to switch from in-person to remote work. That also forced organizations to rethink everything, how they communicated with each other, how teamwork worked, how they communicated with their teams. It brought new forms of research or new areas of research. In organizational psychology, we looked at and currently are looking at virtual meetings and burnout and work-life balance. Companies took this on and wanted to improve. They wanted to get better for their employees. They started offering flexible schedules. We saw hybrid work environments. We saw full-time remote and different ways for them to improve their overall employee well-being. They've had to think of how to do this in ways that they really never have had to before. And it did put that employee well-being at the center of everything. We saw social justice movements in 2020. Workplaces began to take a serious look at bias and fairness and inclusion in the workplace. We saw diversity and equity programs become a lot more common. Companies started reviewing the way they hired and the way they promoted. They looked at their workplace culture and make sure that people really felt respected and secure, and brought a lot more attention to psychological safety, emotional intelligence, and belonging at work. We also saw more conversations about the aging workforce, with older adults staying in the workforce much longer. We had leaders such as President Biden who brought attention to this fact of the aging workforce. Organizations also started paying more attention to how age affects learning and performance and well-being. Companies began to offer mentoring programs, flexible job designs, and better support for workers at different career stages. One of the biggest things that happened during the past few years comes from a shift in technology. And everything I think that has happened at an accelerated pace due to the COVID pandemic. We've seen people move to their full-time remote, as I said earlier, and another thing is people have become a lot more connected than ever. We have to consider that's not really always a good thing. There's emails that happen all day long, work texts throughout the day, virtual meetings scheduled pretty much whenever. And that's put a lot of stress on the people, on the workers. And because of that, research has started to look into those types of stresses and digital overload and how to set healthier boundaries. We're starting to slowly see companies respond. They have been adjusting their work schedules and their expectations around that after-hours communication. Finally, 2020s have brought increasing attention on sustainability and climate issues. Employees today care much more about environmental responsibility than ever. And that's pushed organizations to study green behaviors at work and how climate stress affects their mission. So putting all of this together, we see that these events have shifted the field of organizational psychology more towards flexibility and fairness, technology balance, and employee well-being, especially well-being of employees. It didn't only change what we study, but it also changed the way workplaces support their people. Okay, the next question, we are going to be doing a scenario where we are advising a university in diversifying its high-performing faculty. So when we look at this, we have to consider that organizations get better results in hiring when they reach the right people in the right place. And for a university wanting to have a more diverse group of highly qualified faculty, the first thing I would recommend is to cast a wider net. I would use multiple recruitment channels, meaning not targeting just one or two job boards, but getting the word out to several different locations where people with different backgrounds will go looking for those opportunities. So I would tell them to use boards that focus on diversity in their higher education. Built-in, LinkedIn, Ladders are good places, and honestly the PA CareerLink, like where I work, or any of the other states' American Job Center networks will offer free job postings and employer support services. And unfortunately, the universities often overlook them, but they do attract people with different backgrounds. Another piece, very important, is building partnerships. So instead of waiting for the candidates to come to them, the university should seek out groups or schools that support underrepresented talent. I would suggest connecting with historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions. There are professional groups on LinkedIn that support diverse talent. These partnerships can create a steady pipeline of individuals rather than waiting for just that one home run. Another factor is the organizational image. Now, I'm not talking about who has the best football team. I want people want to work where they feel welcome and supported. So I would encourage the university to share real stories, testimonials from faculty who have thrived there, especially faculty from different backgrounds. When candidates see that the schools are inclusive, they're more likely to apply because they can actually picture themselves there. The next thing I would talk about is a fair selection practice. And that really matters a lot here. Using structured interviews with clear scoring systems will help reduce the appearance of bias. Even simple things like having a more diverse interview panel can make the process feel more fair and welcoming to candidates. I would also talk about incentives and support that the organization, that the university can give for the candidates. A lot of times candidates may be coming from different locations or they're moving into new environments. Things like flexible work options, relocation assistance, that's huge, and professional growth opportunities can be a big factor, and it shows that the university cares about the whole person and not just them as a teacher. So using the ideas such as the broad outreach, casting a wide net, making real partnerships, having clear communication about the culture can help the university bring in stronger and a more diverse pool of faculty applicants. Next question. This is another scenario. We're going to work on reducing work-family conflict in order to retain a high performer. Now, these situations are a balancing act. First thing I think about is how work and family pressures can actually pull people in different directions. Even great employees, they can struggle if they feel as if they're being stretched too thin, if their plate's overfull. And so the goal is to help that high performer stay happy with the company. So that way we'll need to lower the pressure and make their day-to-day activities more manageable. One of the simplest ways to do that is by offering a little bit of flexibility. I'm not talking about a massive schedule overhaul. Even small things like adjusting the start or stop times when they need it to give them the option to work from home if the workload allows. Those can make huge differences. It helps the employee handle life outside of work without feeling like they're always falling behind, and it gives them time to recover. Another very important thing is to do regular check-ins. Just Because somebody is the high performer doesn't mean that they need to be left alone. Taking a little bit of time to ask them how things are going, what type of support that they need, that can go a long way. It helps them feel as if they're being supported and they're being heard. Gives you as a leader a chance to catch issues before they blow up into bigger issues. And then we also need to look at their workload. High performers will generally take on more because they want to do a good job. This is great, but it can lead to burnout if it's not managed properly. Making sure that the workload is fair and reasonable helps keep their stress under control so that that employee doesn't feel overwhelmed. I'd also encourage the managers to promote real-time off. A lot of high performers often skip vacation because they see it as a way that they lose productivity and they want to stay productive. The vacation actually helps them recharge. It helps them be able to stay sharp instead of getting burnt out or feeling worn down. Another useful tool is offering some level of family-friendly support. Now, this might mean giving flexible leave and being aware of when family responsibilities come up and pointing them to the resources that make life easier. It sends the message that the company sees them as an individual, not just as a worker. And finally, for high performance employees, it's important that they have growth opportunities. That's key. High performers, they want to feel like they are moving forward, training, mentoring, leadership chances that help them see a future with the company. And that kind of investment builds loyalty, so they'll stick around a lot longer. When you put all of these pieces together, you build an environment where the high performer feels supported, both at work and at home. The balance makes it much, much more likely that they'll stay committed and continue to do their best. Okay, for this question number 4, we're going to look at a job description. And I found a job description that is at my office. It's for a Goodwill Youth Career Facilitator. They're career planners, essentially, who work with the youth population. So when I look at a job posting, it leans too much on things like always being positive or constantly going above and beyond. It automatically causes a few concerns. These kinds of expectations, they sound nice and they're good on paper, but they put a lot of pressure on the person who is coming into the role. They also make the job unclear because they focus more on personality traits rather than the actual work that needs to get done. So in the youth career facilitator posting that we're looking at, there's a few good examples. So they have phrases in there like go above and beyond or always stay positive. Now that sets an expectation that the employee has to give a nonstop effort all the time. And that's not realistic. It does not help the candidates understand what their day-to-day will look like. It adds emotional pressure because no one can be cheerful all the time, especially when you're working with youth who are facing real challenges or real barriers. Their family situation sometimes can be heart-wrenching. Another issue in this job posting is some of the open-ended wording, like help in any other way needed. When I see that tells me the role doesn't have clear boundaries, and it makes the job seem unlimited. That kind of lack of clarity sometimes leads to burnout because the employee will feel responsible for everything. To improve this posting, maybe shift the language towards more specific tasks. So instead of saying, go above and beyond, I would describe what support the employee actually provides, something like support youth with job readiness training, goal planning and program activities. And that gives a real picture of the job, of what they'll do on a day-to-day basis. As far as the emotional labor, instead of saying always stay positive, how about we say something that's a little bit more professional, a little bit more fair, a line like maintain a supportive and respectful approach when working with youth. That will set a standard without expecting constant emotional perfection. I'd also remove the wording around any other duties. and replace it with maybe a shorter list of real responsibilities. That helps the candidate get a better idea of what the job includes, instead of having to guess or worry about hidden expectations. By making these changes, and they're not huge changes, the job posting becomes more honest, more healthier for the person who fills the role, and it sets fair expectations from the start. It supports a better long-term relationship with the employee and the organization. All right, for the last question, we are going to tackle another scenario. Now, in this one, it is an organization that has currently had an increase of some counterproductive work behavior around the employees working fewer hours for several work groups than what they were hired for. We're going to do an audit, and we're going to take a look at the company's policies and expectations and the job duties to see if there's anything that emerges as far as organizational constraints go that might influence this uptick in behavior. Now, when we look at a situation like this where people are starting to work fewer hours than what they're hired for, we can't jump straight to blaming the employees. We can't, jump to conclusions there. In a lot of cases, the counterproductive work behavior, or CWD, is a reaction to something getting in their way. In my experience, it comes back to a few, common issues that we might be able to fix with a different approach. First thing that we can look at are some unclear job expectations. If people aren't sure what the priorities are or what success looks like, they'll naturally pull back because they don't really want to waste effort. The solution here is to clarify the roles, talk through the expectations, and make sure everyone understands what the job really requires. The next thing to look at is fairness. When employees feel like they're not being treated fairly, either pay, workload, or recognition, their motivation drops. And a lot of times you'll see frustration show up in their behavior. A really easy way to address this is just to get honest feedback. Look for some gaps in the fairness, and we'll take care of those things as needed. Another big factor is stress and burnout. When the workload's too heavy or people don't have the tools that they need, they tend to shut down. Then that could lead to them working fewer hours, as we see in this scenario, or they're doing the bare minimum because they're just trying to protect themselves, basically working to the level of the expectations that they see. So fixing this, that's going to mean giving the employees the resources they need and balancing the workloads so that it's doable. Their motivation then becomes a factor. If people feel like their work doesn't matter, they have no purpose, or their efforts are going unnoticed, they can pull away. They become demotivated. So that's where recognizing their work and offering growth opportunities is a good thing, and it keeps people engaged, and it can help raise motivation. Sometimes it could come down to the team culture itself. If working fewer hours becomes normal for one group, others may copy that pattern. Resetting the norms takes strong leadership. Setting clear expectations and accountability, sometimes it's not easy sometimes. But it is about reinforcing what good performance looks like and supporting people who want to do their best. Nobody wakes up in the morning and want to fail. So the last key to this, and it's key to a lot of different parts of us, is communication. When people feel like they're kept out of the loop, or they're being unheard, or they think that there's secrets going on, then these CWBs will manifest themselves. So again, we avoid that by having better communication, being transparent, being clear and timely with the communication, sharing updates as soon as we can, as soon as it's possible. And of course, listening is very, very important. We have 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? So we listen, and that helps people feel more connected, and it helps them feel valued. So in a case like this, the goal is not going to be to punish people for working few hours. We have to fix the constraints that are causing the behavior. And then once we clear those barriers and are able to let the employees work at their best and be their best selves, provide them the right amount of support, their motivation will improve, the performance in turn will improve, and those counterproductive work behaviors will fade on their own. Everything I've covered connects back to the idea that people will do their best when they feel supported, respected, and understood. For me, those concepts aren't just theories. They show up every day during the work I do at the PA CareerLink. I see how clarity, fairness, communication, and genuine support can change the way someone experiences their job. I also, unfortunately, see what happens when those things are missing. My name is Joe Razzo, and this has been my presentation on productive and counterproductive behaviors for PSYC 516 at Liberty University. Thank you for watching, and I appreciate your time.